First of all, I wanted to start off with the definition of what mastery is, right? So mastery is the ability to control or skillfully manage something, right? So with that being said, I'm gonna move down to another one. This is emotional mastery. So this is what I found as being what I looked at as being what I felt like what the best definition of emotional mastery is. And that is being aware of your feelings, understanding their root, and responding intentionally instead of reacting impulsively. So, with that being said, moving down one more time, what are some common emotions? So, we're talking about mastering emotions. So, what are some of the common emotions that we use, like on our day to day life, or some emotions that we may feel like we need to master? So that'll be our first question for this evening for the chat and for the panel. So, gentlemen, what are some common emotions that you feel we may need to master, or just some common emotions that may come up in day to day life?
I don't know if this classifies as emotion, but I would say shame.
Did you say shame?
Yes.
Okay.
I know when they come up all the time. See it on social media. Anger. Anger is an emotion that comes up all the time. And I think that that is definitely one emotion that we may need to master, at least be better at.
I'd say sadness, because when people aren't necessarily mastering sadness, it can lead to various levels of mental instability. So sadness.
I say all of them.
Mm-hmm.
Every last one of them. What are some common emotions? You know, happy, sad, anger, frustration, disappointment. You know, being content, being anxious. All of those things. I think
Yep.
every last one of them need to be um, mastered, regulated, if you will. I want to dig into that master thing going forward, though. But
Yeah.
we'll get there.
Yeah. I do too. Because even when I was doing the questions and stuff, I was like, man, I had some follow-on questions, and then we might even get to it on the next question. So here it is. Yeah, so here we go. So why is mastering your emotions more important than just expressing them? And I don't know if there's a pre-question before this, um, but we may end up circling back, especially with this being a two-part question. So, gentlemen, why is mastering your emotions more important than just expressing them?
Because it allows you to make clear decisions. It unmuddies the water when it comes to decision making, thinking, and things of that nature.
I guess I'll take the left side of the road for a second, because you can kind of see how mastering our emotions puts us in a mindset to be able to be led by the Father, by the Most High. He tells us, "Be anxious for nothing." Uh, to think on these things, whatsoever things are good, whatsoever things are of good report. Let's just make it short, right? Think on these things, because I think our emotions will cause us to move in the realm of our flesh, because our emotions are based upon how our flesh is feeling because of a thing, because of what's happening, what was said, what's going on. And so when we react out of those things, if we don't master those emotions and learn, because even sometimes expressing can be a part of mastering, but knowing when and how to express and how to handle it. So that's my answer.
So to the question,
Okay.
why is mastering your emotions important than just expressing them? Because it keeps your brain intact. When my emotions tend to take over, I tend to respond from the space of my emotions, not necessarily from the space of logic, reasoning, and all of those. Those are great things. So when I respond emotionally, I have a tendency to respond in such a way that I, at a later point in time, may regret But I also say this in conjunction with this, because what was your definition of mastery? The ability to
Abil-
control or skillfully manage something. When I teach, so when I'm teaching lieutenants, um, when I'm teaching lieutenants and captains as it pertains to training management, one of the things that the Army wants us to talk about is task mastery. And so task mastery is a thing. And I try to describe mastery as a thing that you do without conscious resources. So a thing that you tend to do well without the use of conscious resource. So it's almost like, remember when Michael Jordan played basketball and he had that one game where he was in a zone and he come down the court and he just throw his hands up like that. What he's really saying is that I just feel like I can't miss. The rim seems that big to me. But how did he get there? He got there through the hours and hours and hours and hours and hours of practice. So I said all that to say, as it pertains to mastering emotions, is it really possible that you can master emotions?
And see, I had over here as a follow-on question. I didn't type it up, but I have it in my notes. And the follow-up question is this: why can't I just be good at them? Am I okay? And so this is kind of adding on to what you're saying. Is being really good at managing my emotions good enough, or do I really need to master? Because, like you said, can we really master them in the first place? So I
But
don't know.
but then there's a challenge with that as well,
Okay.
because who determines good in that essence?
So it's subjective.
I mean, I think when you look at it, when you say, "Can you master your emotions?" For me, it's like depending on how you are looking at mastering your emotions. I'm not looking at mastering my emotions as if I get to tell my emotions when to feel and when not to feel. That I don't think you can master, because you feel the way you feel about a thing, right? Maybe you can change your mindset about the thing so that this way it don't cause that emotion. But whatever you begin to feel about it, the way I'm thinking about emotion, there's an emotion attached to that. So the only thing that I can really master is me, regardless of how I feel, regardless of what my emotions are. I think it's me that I can master. The way I think about a thing can cause. I see you, but because I'm thinking, because you made me angry, don't mean I have to fight, or doesn't mean I have to cuss you out. I need to master my tongue. I need to master my behavior. That makes sense.
That it makes sense to me. So you say no. Roland, what saith he?
So what am I saying yes or no to?
Can you master your emotions?
I think no. I think that you find ways to, I ain't even gonna use the word master. You find ways to navigate through problem solving and everything during the moment. Because where I am now mentally, the same situation today, I may be able to handle it tomorrow after going through some things, because now you add in other factors. And when you discipline yourself in certain areas, you learn to handle it. But sometimes I may not be able to. So the mastery part, I'm not necessarily feeling, because it means that I have control over it versus it being a thing that I am involved
So
That's why
because
I said it depends on how you look at it, mastering your emotions. Because I'm still in the mindset of let this mind, like, and I know we like to use "let this mind be of you," which is also in Yahweh Shahamashiach. But I'm thinking, right, when he tells us to think on these things, like, and I think I did a sermon at Unity, and I was like, it's all in your mind, because it's the way we think about things, and I think that's more so considering like certain things we go through, right? As you get older, you start realizing some of the things you went through were just experience to get through things more smoothly when you get older. But it's the way we think about them, because I no longer get excited about this because I've seen it come and go already. So I don't know if that's mastering. If I can put myself in a mindset to where I don't think about the thing the same way. So therefore, it kind of not hides the emotion, but it kind of shifts the way I feel, the way my emotions react to that thing. I don't know if that's what Roland was saying.
I'm saying you may control it in that moment, but then if you add in other variables to go against what you're doing, now you lose control. What you were trying to control or whatever, you lose that because now you added in other things and what you were trying to do and trying to be at peace. And I'm trying to stay calm. Now you just popped off because somebody else added something into it.
I'm a firm believer that life will present to you the very thing that challenges you to help you to realize that you're not as far advanced as you think you are. Only thing you got to do is give time. So you may feel that I'm good at mastering my emotions. I'm good. I'm emotionally stable. And then next thing you know, something happens, and then that thing may trigger you. And then you realize something about yourself. That's really the reason why that thing happened. That thing happened to humble you. The same person that wrote the scripture, let this mind be in you, the same mind was in Christ Jesus, was the same person that wrote the scripture and said, hey, I went to the Father 3 times and asked him to move this thorn that was in my side. And he said, my grace is good enough for thee. So I think in the scope of these several different thoughts that we can have as it pertains to emotions, I'm not, I for one don't believe that you ever get to the point of mastering emotions. You get to the point to where the emotions teach you something about yourself. So the Father will never allow you to master your emotions, because if that's the case, then there will not be any fear. And if there is no fear, well, then there's some other things that go along with that as well. So sure, we can talk about emotional regulation. We can talk about management. We can even talk about mastery to a sense. But are we referring to mastery as a thing that is a progressive nature, or are we referring to mastery as a thing of complete stoicism?
And see, that's where I'm torn right now, right? I'm torn between two different definitions. If I'm looking at this definition of mastery, it says the ability to control or skillfully manage something. I believe that right now, for the most part, I have the ability, and I think you gentlemen do too, to ability to skillfully and manage your emotions. However, if I'm looking at coach's definitions, then I don't think that I can gain mastery, right? Because I guess if I'm kind of paraphrasing what you were saying, when you're looking at the students and stuff like this, you said something to the effect of mastery has in similar form to kind of like the ability to do something like second nature, correct?
Yes.
Right. So I believe that, or at least the way I'm thinking that, I don't think I can get to where all of my emotions second nature. I just have control over them. I think, like all of you guys saying, that there are going to be times where things are going to come up and it's going to break me outside of what's considered my norm. So I don't, according to your definition, believe that we can. But then going back to this definition, I believe that we can. And the analogy I came up in my head with, and gentlemen, please let me know if I'm way off, and that is our ability to drive a car. I don't know if it's saying the same thing, but we all been driving for a long time. I ain't had an accident in who knows how long. I believe that since I was 11 years old to this point at 49, I have mastered the ability to drive my vehicle. So is that an accurate analogy, or is that way off? And this kind of
No,
goes back to this definition and not your definition.
no, it is
Okay,
not.
no. Okay.
And here's why I say that. My
Mhm.
car is designed to perform a particular function.
Yeah.
As long as I do the normal maintenance to that particular car, there's a high probability that when I go outside and stick the key in the ignition, it will do what it's supposed to do. Now,
Mhm.
taking that same definition and putting me on I-20 at a high rate of speed, and somebody like they did the other day I'm doing 75. This dude blows past me, and I see him in the rear view mirror because I'm coming up on a stop because they're doing some construction. So I'm coming up on a stop, and he darts in the lane behind me and literally have to slam on brakes to where the tail end of his truck goes up. Then when we start going again, this dude is in and out of traffic. Again, I'm doing 75. He blows past me. And like, so stuff like that, Like, sure, you're on emotional alert at that point because you see this guy. I'm doing a high rate of speed, but now that causes me to respond and do something because when he passes me, I'm slowing down just a little bit, just in case I'm sorry, just in case he decides he want to dart over in my lane. So the car may not necessarily be a great analogy, but what happens in the car when I'm driving could be a fantastic analogy because when
Yeah,
I
the
was
driving
younger,
part is what I meant.
right, when I was younger, flying by the seat of my pants, bro,
Yeah.
bulletproof, no fear. Let me tell you something. I don't even like driving at night now. So it's a whole different set of emotions that factor in when you get older.
Okay.
I guess I was looking at it like the car analogy wasn't too bad because what I was thinking about was he mastered his skill of handling the automobile. But are you really the master of the automobile? Because if it when you can
But
you
that's
can
out of my control.
what what I'm saying is you can change all the oil you want, but when that thing ready to die, it dies. When everything ready to break down, it breaks down. You have to do maintenance on it, and that's the same thing we talk. I'm hearing when we're talking about this emotion is I still have to do maintenance. We can become skillful in how we handle it and how we use our emotions. So I'm hearing the same thing. I don't know,
But
but
don't
it
I
doesn't mean that we're mastering.
don't I kind of like have an awareness about if my car is going to start acting funky or something? Don't it kind of give me a warning to some
Sometimes.
degree? If I got 400,000 miles on the dash, like, I'm just being honest. If I ain't changed my oil in like 10 months, you
Get
know,
some triggers.
What's that
Yeah.
knocking for?
There's
yeah.
some brand new cars.
Let me know.
There's some brand new cars fresh off the lot sitting in the shop.
Now,
But he was
gentlemen,
speaking of driving though, and driving, yes, he probably did master the basics of driving. But now when you on the highway, that's why they don't start you off on the highway. They start you off in the parking lot. Walk around the
you
car.
know what?
Get in
Yeah,
the
because
car.
I can't drive. Am I driving second nature? I don't know. We got to move on. We've been talking about driving all day. All right, let's move on, folks. All right. And matter of fact, Gaddy, you are the perfect person to respond to this because you was already right around in this area when you was just finished up your comment. So, what is the danger of constantly reacting based off how we feel in the moment? Now, I know none of you gentlemen up here, and I know nobody in the chat, and none of us up here ever react based off how we feel in the moment. But this is just for people who may have been in this situation. You know what I mean? So what do you say, Gaddy? What's the danger of constantly reacting based off how we feel in the moment?
We don't have time to count the cost of our action. Right. When I act off of how I feel in the moment, I haven't given real thought to the cost. And so the repercussion that comes behind it, the question is, are you prepared for it? You now become reactive to everything that comes off of you reacting out of how you feel in the moment. And now you working behind the power curve. You're not ahead of it because there was no thought put into it. Versus if I stop for a moment and think, even if I do the action that I wanted to do initially, but I've now thought out the cost and I know what I have to do to get prepared for what's coming behind it.
Hey, real quick, I want to get back to this. All right, I did see a question, and I may saw another one. I just want to jump on this real quick. I don't want to spend too much time on it, but this is a good question. Who determines? Because I think Coach mentioned something about subjectivity earlier. So again, you said who determines what's good. So right here, who determines whether we have mastered our emotions?
Okay, great. I'm gonna answer this question the same way I answered this question
Here we go.
for the lieutenants when I'm talking to them, because you got to
Okay.
understand when it comes down to task evaluation, we evaluate tasks based upon TPME, right? Task means trained, P practiced, U is untrained. So there's a step-by-step process to be able to look at what they're doing and determine whether or not they are proficient on that task at the level of train. But when it comes down to task mastery, no external individual can determine whether or not that team is trained except for the OIC and the NCOIC of that team based upon how they are sensing one another in the moment and responding to every variable that you throw at them. That being said, who determines whether we have mastered our emotions? No one can determine whether or not I master my emotion except for me and my creator. But again, I go back to what I said. I don't ever believe that my creator will allow me to master my emotions, because there has to be something, regardless of how arrogant and superficial I become, that brings me back to him. And that is always my emotions.
Mm. Did you have something rolling?
Yeah, I'm just gonna take it. Everybody going back to the military, so I guess I'll ride with y'all. We had this thing called the PMCS. They had 10 level maintenance, 20 level maintenance, 30, so forth. So when it came to vehicles or whatever equipment, your level of mastery was already stated. This is where you are. I don't expect for you to be at a 30 level when you only at a 10 level. I think when it comes to us, I don't expect my 2 and 3-year-old grandchild to have the emotional fortitude of the teenagers, but I don't expect the teenager to have it as their parents. So I think that that's where we are. We need to, the individual has to look and say, man, I'm not where I thought I was, or I handled that good, but because I look at it like when it comes to emotions and things of that nature, you may be a control freak like myself and always want to be in control, but there's always that one thing. Because remember, when we were young, when we got into it, somebody was going, I dare you knock that off my shoulder. And that was going to get you mad. Nowadays, you knock it off, it's like, okay, and because you understand now at that level, it's not even worth it.
All right, that'll work for me, gentlemen. You ain't got to roll with the gaddy. I just want to just knock that question out real quick, just to see what we were thinking about it. But Roland or Coach, back to this question. What's the danger of constantly reacting based on how we feel in the moment?
Because your feelings can lie to you. There are so many different variables that tie to how you feel in the moment. Um, a lot of times it's unresolved emotions tied to a particular situation that took place in your past. So, therefore, when a situation that resembles that past situation comes up, those same emotions you had back then would tend to surface itself in that particular moment. Your perception is another thing that can actually cause you to feel a particular thing, not necessarily knowing the reality, because your perception is rooted in how you see it, not necessarily what the reality of the thing is. So you can feel a particular type of way, and you get and I can give a few examples just based upon this year alone, right? Just because we know of a thing that might be happening, people started feeling this type of way. People started feeling that type of way with no relevant evidence that it was going to come to pass, but they just started being all in their emotions about a thing. So, past unresolved events that we have not yet resonated with, my perception can cause me to see a thing and automatically assume a thing to be is not. That's where anxiety comes from. That's where depression exists, right? Anxiety, the future perception of an unwanted circumstance, and depression, the past reflection of an undesirable circumstance or undesired circumstance. So, constantly thinking in those things causes these feelings to exist. So, when we constantly react to how we feel, we're existing in a very emotional state that borderlines on not necessarily understanding reality.
You muted.
The same way when you were saying you were on the highway, coach, somebody's doing 75. If you had a previous incident where that happened and somebody crashed into you or you were in an accident, now your hair starts to stand up. So now you have a biological, you have a psychological, and you also have a social aspect to what your brain is going through. So now as your brain is going through this, it's going to tell you to react a certain way. And when you can't control that, or when you can't navigate through that, now that's when people shut down. That's when you have issues of anxiety and so forth and so on. So that lack of control in the small things builds up to larger things where you can't navigate as an adult.
All those are some great responses. I want to go something a little bit I'll go a little more tangible, action things. if we look around the world today, we see a lot of people who are in jail. We look at schools, we see a lot of people acting out with an impulse. Look at the internet, you see people slicing people's tires, people doing all kind of stuff. A lot of those things are people reacting based off of how they feel in the moment. So for me, just at the base surface level, it can cause you to get in trouble. It can cause you to be locked up. It can cause you to find yourself paying fines. It can cause you to find yourself in a bad way. Article 15, if you want to go back to the military, there's a lot of us who grew up and did things based out of anger because we were feeling a certain way. A lot of times when we look at abuse and domestic violence and things that happen to children, some of those things are mental illness, but some of those things are, excuse me, some of those things are happening because parents are feeling a certain way in the moment, and then they go and they react and these things happen. So I think that one of the big things that happens when people react out off of how they feel in a moment is that people get hurt, and people find themselves in situations like jail or on the other side of the law. So that's my 2 cents. What do y'all think about that, or anything else about this question before we move on? We good? Let's roll with it. Last question. We're gonna get into some fact or myth. So, how do you tell the difference between emotional suppression and emotional discipline? Now, for me, this took a little bit of something to get through a few years back, but I kind of understand it now. But I want you gentlemen to see what you think. How do you tell the difference between emotional suppression and emotional discipline?
I got a question about the question.
Yes, sir.
I don't mean to sound like a bump on the log, but what do you mean when you ask how do you tell the difference? Are you talking internal within me or just in general?
Mainly within yourself,
Okay.
because for me, when I went through it, I had to determine what I was suppression and what was just discipline and what I shouldn't. So more so internally.
Uh, so because I'm thinking of the word suppression, and then you said and emotional discipline. So I'm assuming that we're saying a contrast, right? So, to me, a suppression, a contrast to suppress would be to express. And so when I think about how do I know the difference, I think the difference is versus me just holding everything in. Some people look at that as, oh, I brushed it off or it don't bother me. But I think having that emotional discipline is sometimes knowing how to properly express how you feeling without flying off the handle. So if you do something that bothers me, instead of me going off the handle or doing something petty behind your back because of how you made me feel, we have a conversation, a productive conversation that that comes with the problem and a solution versus just me saying you. Well, what do we do going forward? How do we handle this type of situation next time? What would I like for you to do instead of that, or how would I like for the situation to be handled instead? Because I can't tell you what to do, but I can tell you what I would allow, as far as people playing in my face. But if that's just kind of where I stand with it.
All right. So here's how this all kind of came out for me a few years back ago. A lot of times, we're raised that we're supposed to suppress our emotions. Boys grow up, hey, suck it up. You know, get on back out there and play, right? So a lot of time we was told that we couldn't cry, so we were suppressing our emotions. We really, a lot of times, we wanted to reach out. We may have wanted to reach out to our mom and say, hey mom, can you kiss my boo-boo or whatever like this, but we didn't. We suppressed a lot of those emotions. But for me, what it kind of came down to was the why. It was that when that emotion came up, why was I suppressing it, or why, or more like the why or the when, or the why or the what, what was I suppressing, what was I suppressing and why? And then the other part of that was the emotional discipline. Same situation, do I, if I fall down and I bump my knee or something like that, do I need to express my emotion, or do I need to hold that in? So I know I'm kind of talking around it. I got my thoughts mixed up a little bit, but I just kind of went through a change in my life where I stopped suppressing and I started managing, like kind of word the coach they used earlier, managing my emotions a lot better, to where I became a lot more disciplined in my emotions, knowing when and where to display certain types of emotions versus just holding everything in and suppressing every single emotion. There are certain times and places where emotions are used and they should be regulated and managed and different things like that. But that's kind of where I want to stop right now, and kind of let you gentlemen either add to or take away from what I was talking about, or either kind of more so with the question.
So I think everybody did this when they were younger. They took a soda bottle and they tightened the cap as tight as they possibly could, and they just shook it up. And then they stood back and they just released it, and it just exploded. That's what emotional suppression is. Um, when you suppress emotions, you're not behaving better in the midst of the thing. It's almost like you're capping the emotion in the midst of the thing. And then it builds and builds and builds. It causes internal frustration. It causes heart rates to speed up. It causes you to start sweating. It causes you to do a number of different things that's happening in that particular moment. You may have to walk out. It's almost like, I hate to say it this way, it's almost like seeing somebody who is struggling with PTSD. It literally is similar to that. Um, Suppressing is not good. It is very harmful to you from an internal perspective, because depending upon how often and frequently you have to suppress emotions, you can become tired and exhausted by the end of the day. On the other hand, learning emotional discipline is something totally different, because at the end of the day, now you understand how to respond in the midst of the thing. I don't necessarily have to pop off, you know what I'm saying, give you the business when you say a thing or whatever the case may be, even if, you coming at me sideways and giving me the business. But I can find ways to express myself in such a way that I don't lose control and I don't create more tension within the situation. But I also believe that those situations, being consciously aware of those situations, the frequency of those situations, and the people who ignite the fire for those situations is important as well. So when you have people who antagonize, do things just because of this or just because of that, that could be a sign and indicator that, look, I need to create space between me and this person, because this person is intentionally doing these things to where I am trying to move away from those things as well. So I think when we look at suppression versus discipline, it is a harmful effect that is caused on me. And again, it will take a toll on me from a physiological perspective. It will take a toll on me from a stressful perspective, blood pressure. All of those things is possible in the midst of that. Discipline, not so much, because now I'm in the space where I am regulating and managing in what I tend to call a slow release state.
I love it. Exactly what Coach said. But I think that, I mean, for real, it's plain and simple, straight to the point. And I think that when it comes to discipline, discipline says, I'm not running from it. I'm not trying to avoid it. Even if I try to avoid people's uh, ability to try to push me towards something that I don't want to even deal with right now. I think when you suppress something, you act like it ain't there. You act like it's not happening. You act like, okay, I'm in control. you may tense up or whatever. But I think that we should be able to see the differences in people when they are in tense situations. Because it's not when you're not in a tense situation, it's when something comes up against you and how you deal or handle that. Because sometimes we may handle things, we may think we're handling it by saying, okay, whatever. You didn't handle it. You just suppressed it. You put it back because you have an emotional response that you're controlling now instead of handling it, saying, "Hey, okay, you want to talk about it? Let's talk about it." See, when you can't talk about something, now you want to suppress it. But when you can actually talk about it, dialogue. I remember in therapy always put the thing that you were running from out in front of you, so that you had no choice but to handle it, see it, deal with it so that it can not have so much power over you. So when the thing has more, or a situation, the emotion, whatever, when it has more power over you, you are not disciplined enough to handle that thing. So you will suppress.
So I got a I got a question for y'all. Was this emotional suppression or was it emotional discipline? Right. So I've been thinking about this for a while, and I think I think it's discipline, not suppression. Right. But I also wonder if suppression can turn into discipline, like in within the same moment or situation, right? So, back in 2018, I lost my father, and I did the eulogy, right? It was, and I made it through the entire eulogy, but there were some times during the eulogy where I got choked up a little bit. It was barely noticeable, well, barely noticeable because I was suppressing my emotions, right? I had to try to get this eulogy out and I wanted to get it out, blah, blah, blah. Right. But then as I walked down and I got halfway down the aisles, that's when it hit me. So was that me suppressing my emotions, or was that me just being disciplined, understanding that, hey, mission first is to deliver the eulogy, and then you can get back to your own feelings in a few minutes. So just based off of just that scenario, is that more of a suppression or is that discipline, or neither, or both? And I'm just curious.
If I had to give a response, I would say suppression. Um,
Suppression.
you had the discipline enough to complete the task. I would even say that a large portion of your military training probably helped you to do so.
Probably.
But at the end of the day, we're talking about your father. You
Mm-hmm.
were supposed to have time to grieve. I
Mm-hmm.
don't care from the time he passed to the time that there was the service. That's not enough time for the son to grieve his father. So
Mm-hmm.
anything that you're doing in that space as it pertains to your dad, that is emotional suppression. Because let's change the dynamics, because we understand that there's a protocol when it comes
Yeah.
down to these services, right? But could you actually stand up there and express how you really and truly felt about your dad to everybody?
Mm.
No, because that's not the time and space for that. So it is suppression at its finest. But again, I believe your military training is one of the things that made it possible for you to be disciplined enough to complete the task. And trust me, I know that there's a lot of other people who may have done the exact same thing that has never been in the military. But again, it's just their idea. I got to get through it. 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 And I've never been in that position to where I had to eulogize my father, or was I a funeral home director to where I put it on the son to give the eulogy. But I would never put it on the son to give the eulogy, because at the end of the day, the son deserved the exact same great service that the wife deserves, and so forth and so on across the board. So I'm not going to put that on you to do that, because you're in mourning. And in all actuality, and this is just me, my perspective, my thoughts. Um, you deserve that time to grieve your father.
Mm.
Uh, I was actually thinking of something like this because, with my mother coming down and everything and getting up in age, the other day I was thinking to myself, I was just thinking, like, man, I know when this happens with my mom, I'm gonna have to be the strong one for my sister and all this other stuff. so that I can come and make sure things happen and allow her the space. But I'm thinking to myself, like, man, I'm going to crash afterwards. I'm already thinking it. So I'm already suppressing those feelings and emotions so that I can get through that task. And I've already told myself that I'm doing.
Got anything, Gaddy?
Yeah. So I eulogized my mother. I was prepared to eulogize my father, but my siblings went and hired a minister. Nobody go to church, so nobody knew this guy. He was just recommended by the funeral home, so he was connected with them. He got him a good check and gave us 5 minutes and got up out of there. I would say, and don't ask me why my father was harder to deal with. And sometimes I ask myself, maybe because I got to eulogize my mother and I didn't eulogize my father. But for me, it was a relief. It was an ability to deal. Like a lot of what went into to those sermons, right, were things that I wanted to get out, But I was able, to me, it was kind of a lot of my expression was wrapped up in me being able to eulogize them, to have that floor, to have that time. But then when I didn't have that time with my father, to do the eulogy and to speak before the family, that one was a little harder to deal with. And I'm not saying this because or not because of the eulogy. I don't know, but I do know losing my father was a little tougher. But the difference is I did eulogize my mother though. So,
Yeah. And I appreciate all y'all's feedback on that. I'm again looking up at the title, and it's entitled "Master Your Emotions." Don't let them master you. There are times where we have to manage our emotions, and there are a lot of times, but they're not going to always be situations where we're about to fight. Sometimes they are when our kids start bucking at us. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes we have to manage our emotions, like I said, doing eulogies or doing, whatever different times that we may see ourselves. So all of them are not necessarily just the other side of those. I just wanted to highlight that real quick. But not real quick, but let's move to a couple of fact or myth questions. Myth. Break it up a little bit. But while y'all let it, folks, again, appreciate y'all for being here, been looking at the chat. A lot of y'all been chiming in and adding to the conversation. So it is very, very, very much appreciated. We always enjoy when you guys add to the conversation. So much appreciated.
Hit that like button.
Yeah, hit that like button.
I'm looking at the numbers. Hit that like button. Y'all cheating us today.
Yeah, share it, save it, pass it along to somebody. So here we go. Fact or myth? Mastering emotions mean you don't feel them.
Myth.
Okay. I don't feel nothing.
Hey, I'm with Nadella. False.
Nadella said false.
Nadella said false. I'm with her on that one.
Did she mean false?
We got a fact and a myth.
Yeah, no, I'm with her. It's a myth.
Oh, we got an F. Why is it a fact or why is it a myth?
That's like if we use that car analogy, since I liked it, it's like saying I mastered my car so I don't drive it, so it don't break down, it don't crash.
It's like, the same way over spiritual people will say, I'm not, the doctor say you got cancer, you saying, I'm not claiming that. The doctor say you got it, you ain't got to claim it, you got it. And it's going to be at home when you get there. That's the same.
They don't claim it, huh? All right, here we go. Moving along. Men are naturally less emotional than women. Ooh, here we go. Is it a fact or something? We hear it all the time.
Yeah, I saw Coach's face. I want him to go first.
I just want to hear what people say.
It's definitely a myth. Come on,
definitely a myth.
Yeah. I don't even want to expound on it. It's a myth.
Yeah, myth.
Yeah, I'm with it, myth.
What'd you say, Roland?
Man,
You
this
said myth?
is the 21st century.
Oh, like I ain't even gonna entertain that one. Here we go. Fact or myth? Emotional intelligence is more important than IQ in leadership. Here we go. Men may not show it. Men are better at managing them. Are those
I'm
facts or
leaning on the
myths?
side of the fact with that one for me.
This one right here?
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah, I probably got to say fact.
Definite fact.
Yeah.
yeah, I know. Yeah. Let me start on that one. Fact or myth? If something triggers you, it's always something's fault. If I'm triggered because of something Roland said, it is his fault.
It depends on who you talk to.
Depending on who you talk to.
If Roland said it, he probably being petty. So fact. Nah, I'm joking.
No, your triggers are yours. They not anybody else's.
Yeah,
What he
I'm with,
said.
I'm with it. I'm with it. Nah, that's myth.
I'm waiting to see it. I'm waiting to see a F. I don't think we gonna get no F's out of this group. Here we go. Appreciate all y'all's answers and responses in the chat. Oh, we got an F. We got a fact. So why is this question a fact or a myth?
She did
If
that
someone
because she was
triggered
looking for
you.
an F.
Yep, we got one. Uh-oh. So why is this a fact or a myth? If someone triggers you, how could this be? Why is this a myth? She may be behind.
Triggers
Oh.
are internal to the person.
Well, they said she might
Someone
be
may
behind.
never know what triggers you, but then it could be a word, it could be a phrase, it could be a smell, and it's all psychosomatic for that individual, not the person that's delivering it. So I can't accept responsibility for your feelings of something going wrong when that's not my intent.
Yeah, I'm not going to place blame at all when it comes to triggers, right? Because when I hear the word triggers, I always think of, and I think I put it in the chat, I always think of like trauma responses because something somebody said earlier made me think of that. So when I think of triggers, I think of that. So exactly, yes, Nick D, we're like twins. So you know, so is a trauma response my fault? Am I triggered by this thing because it's my fault? No, something happened that may or may not even have been in my control that caused me to have this response to the thing. Whether, like you said, whether it's a smell, a sound, a word, a statement. You know, a lot of us, if we was in a courting stage of a woman and she said something specific that we've heard before, and we know it's never followed by anything good, we triggered. We like, yeah, got to go. 2 fingers. All right. It's not nobody's fault, but it's just kind of one of those. My experience teaches me to be watchful for this because of whatever took place.
We all have relationships with people, and I'm not necessarily talking about with spouses or anything like that, just in general with other people. But sometimes we have conversations with people. Sometimes we have emotional responses, right? And sometimes they have unresolved. Sometimes that unresolved trauma show up. So how can unresolved trauma show up in emotional responses, or how do they look like? What are some examples that you can see maybe in yourself, or that maybe have come up to where you can see where some trauma showed up and based off someone's response?
I think you can have plenty. I've had experiences where some people were used to physical assertiveness, almost abuse. And when you didn't respond a certain way, you didn't love them. If you loved me, you would handle me like this. And I'm like, oh look, no, I ain't going to jail now. So yeah, it can show up in various ways because that's how they think that they receive certain things.
I think of it like the the same way we just talking about. How can unresolved trauma show up in emotional responses? It to me it shows it's triggers, like just kind of what we were just talking about. When we're talking about unresolved trauma, there are triggers that are attached to that. So sometimes it shows up like I begin to disassociate from the conversation or the scenario or the whatever. We may be in a group setting and I just lean back and no longer participate in the conversation, or I'll go to the other side of the room and I just, oh no, I'm just chilling. I just got tired or whatever the case may be. So sometimes it shows up as that, as avoidance, or sometimes overreaction to, sometimes an emotional break to where I just, somebody breaks down and cry because, the overwhelming of the emotion that came from the trauma response. So that's how I look at it.
Y'all ever worked around somebody who was always like irritable? Like every time it's like they're always upset, they always frustrated, they ain't never happy. You like, what in the world has to be going on in your life that you ain't never happy about nothing? I know somebody like that. And I know that ain't nothing but unresolved trauma. Every time they talk or have a conversation, you just see it and you just like, what in the world really went on in this person's past? And your heart can't really help but to go out to them, and being just being a counselor and a coach and stuff like this. I understand it, I see it, but it's just like, so that's kind of how I see it show up sometimes. I just see it show up as sometimes people just being irritable and angry, and every time you say something, they just like, or whatever, just always on edge, and that's for me, that's one of the ways that I see unresolved trauma show up in emotional responses based off how they respond to you. You just ask them simple, basic questions about stuff.
Coach, you got something?
Yeah. So we suffer from concept creep. Bad. All expressed trauma ain't trauma. It's just life happening and you're calling it a traumatic event. Was it bad? Sure. It was bad. It didn't feel good. I get it. But it wasn't trauma. You just didn't like it. Own the fact that you just didn't like it and move on. It's that simple. So when we look at how it shows up, right? This unresolved event or this situation that happened, or even some traumatic event, um, the emotional responses that I tend to call it a lot of times, and it's not going to be a very popular response, but you see it in childish behavior. Quick, get angry, start raising your voice, and then you start using general statements. You always, you don't never. Like those are all those types of responses. Let's just sit back and listen for them. Try not to laugh though, because they go over right. But just sit back and listen. It happens every time. I promise. And when you catch it, you be like, oh, that's what he was talking about. Yep. You always, you never, and then they use terms that are to the far left. I hate when. And to be honest with you, I ain't actually whether you hate it or not. At the end of the day, let's stick with the conversations actually being had. So that's just kind of like my initial response. And you'll hear it all the time. And if you pay close attention to it, it's just like glaring. It's like, oh. And sometimes you can get them out, sometimes you can't. But I just be like, hey, I ain't finna go. I ain't finna do all this right here.
And that's exactly what my 3-year-old grandson does. When he doesn't get his way, he'll look mad and say, I'm sad. Because somebody done told him sadness is your feeling and yada, yada, yada. So that's where he goes with it, thinking he's having some traumatic experience. And I think also what people deem as traumatic experiences show what they deem it shows up in negativity. When you are consistently negative about everything, this ain't going right, this ain't going right. That's just your focus. It's not a traumatic experience. It's what you're focusing on right now. And when you can shift that to the positive, you say, it ain't that bad. And it wasn't a trauma. It was just your focus.
Man, I think we got a pretty good. I think we got a pretty smart chat out there. So with that being said, I got another question. This is for the chat and it's for us too. We're gonna dig into this a little bit because we like to talk about relationships, relationships and different things like that. So this is specific to couples, in general because it says your spouse. So here we go. This is a scenario question. We got a couple of them we want to go through. Your spouse says something that hurts, but instead of talking, you shut down. Is this emotional control or avoidance or something different? Feel free to elaborate if you want to.
Could be. And I say it like that because you said this is something else. Yeah, I'm kind of looking like.
I'm gonna give you guys an option. I don't want to just leave it to these. I don't want to box nobody in.
No, and the only reason why I say it that way because I think of.
Ooh, we got a stonewalling.
Yeah, why? I've done this before, and for me the reason is because I anticipate the other person trying to shift blame back over or avoiding, accountability of the kind. And I'm like, I really don't want to get into that conversation. I really don't want to dance around. I know you're lying. That's not happening. Give me 12 examples, right? And so sometimes it's just like, you know what? It ain't that deep. I'm gonna leave it alone. So,
I think Debo said it best when Smokey didn't want to go in the house. No, I'm just kidding. I ain't even gonna go there. But I'm gonna leave that alone. When it comes to things like this, when you try to avoid something, or you can call it stonewalling, you can say it's avoiding, it's not being an adult. It's not knowing how to be an adult and have a conversation. So I don't care what the moniker is. I think as adults, when maturity comes along, that means that I have to have the conversation. That means whether I like it or not, okay, I ain't gotta like it. It's a conversation that needs to be had. So me trying to brush the other person off and give the silent treatment speaks to the lack of maturity that I have.
I think Coach rolling with stonewalling. You pointed to his nose a couple times. Is that your answer?
It is absolutely stonewalling. It is textbook stonewalling. It is what it is. It's also one of the four horsemen of divorce. So when stonewalling start happening, it's stonewalling and another one. When you combine two of them together, it's going downhill from there. So it's definitely stonewalling. Stonewalling is a part of avoidance. It is 100% immature. It is definitely childish. Again, we're talking adults. We're adults. Adults use their words. That's one of the things you taught kids when they were growing up. Use your words, right? That's what you say. Use your words. Yeah, adults use their words. And at the end of the day, when adults get really good, they use their words effectively, right? And then adults get to the point of effective communication. So if the spouse said something that was hurtful, then you have a responsibility to respond to the spouse based upon what she said, right? If you do it the right way, you can share how it makes you feel, but at the end of the day, we're going to address what was actually said.
Yeah. I like how you went, because a lot of times, no one likes to say, hey, you're acting like a child. But shoe fit, kinda. Like, if you're doing these behaviors and you're 45 years old, I'm just throwing a random number out there. And it's like you shutting down, you're not using words. Like literally, I was an elementary school counselor for 7 years. We said there ain't a week that went by, I don't think that I didn't tell some child to use their words or didn't hear it. Say it all the time. But I don't understand why when we become adults, it's an issue. I don't know. You had something rolling? Oh, you was good. All right, let's move along to the next one. All right, so a guy loses his his temper at the gym after missing the lift. Is this just passion, or is his lack of emotional discipline hurting progress? I don't know. I don't like this. I'm getting rid of it. I'm changing my mind. I'm allowed to do that today. So here we go. You are criticized online, and your first instinct is to go off. Do you fire back or master your response?
Hmm.
I don't do
Criticize.
either.
Hmm.
Okay,
I don't do either.
explain.
Like if I'm criticized online, why do I care? Like I've learned a long time ago. Like, don't take criticism from someone you won't take advice from.
Yes.
So at the end of the day, if you're criticizing me online, I don't know you from Adam and Eve. Like, your opinion is your opinion. Thank you for sharing that, but go someplace else. There's like 150,000 other channels you can go look. So I mean, yeah, no, I don't fire back. I ain't gonna go off. I'm not doing any of that. I'm gonna hit. See y'all next week. That's it.
Yeah.
And is that mastering your response to no response?
I wouldn't say master, but I
Mastering.
think it's a better. I wouldn't say master. I would say it's a
Mhm.
better way to respond to a comment that doesn't affect me one way or the other.
Yeah.
I think the issue is that when we're in a space and we're still wanting to be liked by everybody, and then this one person comes along and say, "Hell, well, you think you and you think you know everything," and blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
I
And you're
may,
entitled to your opinion.
right. I may know more than you.
Mhm.
That's probably why you think I know everything. Shut up and
Yeah.
listen. I'm just saying.
Firing back never will. At this age, what's the fire back for? See, I think like this. If you got something to say to me that you meant, or if you said something that I take a certain way, I got y'all numbers. Y'all got my number. So it's not one of them things. I think we take too much, we put too much into other people's opinions of us. So what they say will move me left or right? Not really, especially when I know my intentions and I know my relationships. And if you guys came to me and say, "Hey, when you said this, that could have been taken a certain way," now I take that into consideration and I talk to you guys. But somebody just shooting shots, they're gonna shoot shots anyway. And if I'm worried about them shooting shots, I might well not shoot. Yeah.
Because I'm slightly younger. If
You
I
firing back,
respond,
Gaddy?
if I do, it's because it's fun. Like,
Mm.
not because like you're not finna. What I'm gonna do? Look up your IP address and roll up on you down in Wisconsin and fight you? Like, what?
Give me
I
an
don't. I
example.
don't.
Give me an example of like something, if you can, or like, so I kind of know like what you mean when you like fire back. Cause I understand they're firing back and then they're just responding to somebody as well. So what do you mean? Like, give me an example.
Like, so I'm not a tit for tat type of person. So I'm not
Okay.
I'm not going to say you said
Petty.
this, so I'm gonna say this. If you are criticizing something because I said something in the post or I responded to something to a video and you don't like my response, okay. So what the problem is? And I might, if it's a fun conversation that I enjoy, right? I might argue with you. I might type back and forth with you about LeBron and Jordan, but that's about the extent of it. Ain't nothing like, but I'm not gonna sit there and be like, oh, you said this about me, so I can't state you, bro. Like, you said this about me or about my appearance or about my hair, so now I got to come at you, Bill. No, I don't care. Right?
Bill.
It, it's not gonna like. So that's what I mean. Like, if it's a fun conversation, I'll sit there and I'll go back and forth a little bit. I'm not gonna spend my whole night on go back and forth for 3-4 days in a comment section. Nah, we good.
Yeah. And I think
But
it's a difference between having a fun conversation versus being criticized. as well? You know what I mean? Would you still have that conversation if someone was criticizing you? You know what I mean? I know me personally, I look at stuff like that. I look and see who it comes from, and then I I move accordingly. But most of the time, you know what I mean, it's just someone criticizing and voicing their opinion or perspective. So I ain't got I ain't giving it too much space. Not in my life. One more of the scenarios. We all got family gatherings, right? So at family gatherings, certain comments set you off. You lash out or lean to manage your emotion reactions and protect your peace. Because sometimes we get in family. Sometimes people be running their mouth. Yeah, coaching got to retirement. He got it. He got him a new car and a new house. And he think he better than everybody. I ain't saying in coach's family, maybe not his family, maybe somebody else's family, but sometimes there'll be some comments be said about people. So do y'all lash out? Or do
I
you
think
manage
that
your emotions? They family now. So you
family
can approach
gathering.
them.
Yeah, I think that sometimes you got to put people in that place. That may be
Okay.
outside your house. That may be whatever. But to me, it's to keep the peace because everybody knows that person that's antagonistic and all these things. And if nobody checks them, they're gonna consistently do it. I'm a person, I don't mind checking. I don't mind
You
speaking
check.
to it. Yeah, checking. Yeah, I ain't got time. You sitting up here over here just running off at the mouth. You may have got your little liquid courage and everything. It's time for you to go, uncle, auntie, whomever it is, because you're disturbing, especially if it's my house. Oh, I'm King Jaffe over here. I'm King Jaffe, and I've been a ninja way longer. No, let me stop. I'm King Jaffe over here. So yeah, I got to let people get up out my space. I don't allow mishaps to continue. If you said something once, cool, but if you continue to bring negative energy, I got to help you with that. I got to speak to it to help you, know that no, that's not necessary. It's not needed or wanted.
So based off of the answer, you would be, I'm looking at this, you're not lashing out, but you're also protecting your peace, but you're addressing the situation, but you're not necessarily lashing out.
Right. I'm not gonna come in like, let's fight. I'm coming
And
in to, hey, you're wrong. This ain't the proper way to go about this. And I may not say it in that political way.
so, and for you, by you addressing this, is this helping you to manage your emotional, like
Yeah,
who
because
you are
if
as a
not, I'm gonna hold
person?
it. I'm gonna hold it. I don't
Okay.
want to hold it. I'm gonna get it off. Then I'm talking behind your back. Oh, you said no. I said it right in front of your face.
Okay. All right.
Context matters. And so,
Context.
and by the way, like you mentioned Coach's family, but you said you wasn't your mayor. That was Coach's family. Context matters.
Yeah.
Everybody that's in the family ain't in the family. So, depending upon how it's presented, or maybe it's not even presented at all. Maybe it's a third party thing. Hey, I heard this, I heard that. I'm not participating. I heard, or whatever the case may be. But if you come to me, now I have no other choice but to address it. And I will address it in such a way to, no, I ain't going to threaten to fight you, not like that. But at the end of the day, you're going to know where I stand in relation to the thing that you brought it to me, right? I'm not going to go looking for it. I'm not going to go hunt you down. I'm not doing any of that stuff. That's too much energy. But like I said, context matters. If it's at a family gathering, I think families do the exact same thing they do in public settings. They all segregate. They all find their little pockets and they hang out with their little cliques and all that other great stuff. Well, if you and your little posse over there having your own little conversation, do that. I'm okay with that. But by that same token, when you come over here and then you say something to me, antagonizing me, we got to have us a conversation, man to man. Hopefully, it's man to man.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm on board because there are some people in family gatherings or that, but So here's why I'm torn, because there's some people in the family that we know every time they show up, they drink and they disrupt the entire event. They just always mad, or they angry. They well, y'all always, and no, because you always drunk and getting on everybody's nerves. That's why we be trying to shut you up, sit you down, or send you home. One of the three. But then a part of me is like, if we know that, then one, is it possible to ignore them? Some people know because they get loud and belligerent. Or two, can we stop inviting them all the time? They ain't got to come to every family gathering if they're going to disrupt it all the time. And I get it. Big Mama want them to come because that's her son, and I get that. But Big Mama, we're gonna have to eat this meal without him, because either that or we're gonna have to keep the alcohol out his hand while he here. I feel like
Then he gonna be at the next one too.
He gonna So
they're at all family reunions. They come to everything. They don't miss nothing.
Yeah, to every function. Yeah, absolutely. And so if the answer is no, we can't do none of the above, then yes, somebody has to address it. But sometimes we have to address as a family, what are we going to do? Because ruins because if I'm drunk, whatever you say to me, I'm not listening. That's why I'm acting belligerent anyway, because I'm not coherent. I'm just doing whatever. So, now if we're talking about just, we do have those family members, like what you were saying, like coach family. Oh, he drive a good. You do have those family members that do have that mindset of, if I'm doing better, then I think I'm better, because I no longer act how I used to act when I was in New York, or because I don't still live in the same conditions that I lived in New York. So now I think I'm better than everyone. No, I don't think I'm better than anyone, but I know that I'm doing better than what I was. And so in order to protect what I have and to protect what I'm trying to leave down for my children, I no longer act in a careless manner. And so yes, my actions are more well thought out. My responses, the things I say, are more well thought out, because I'm protecting what I have now. Then not because I think that I'm better. So you do have those instances. So yeah, I would address those, can be addressed. But if it's just because Uncle Ray can't handle his liquor and he's always drunk at the same time, as a family, we need to have a discussion what we're gonna do.
Give Uncle Ray some Sprite. Stop having. I think that when it comes to situations like that, sometimes you got to have a talk at the beginning. Like, hey, last time it went like this. We trying to have something positive, and we trying to move forward as a family. You can't be like you were before. And I think if you have conversations ahead of time, it'll kind of, quench it a little bit, but people gonna be people.
Yeah, and when you figure out how to have that conversation effectively, write a book and make some money off of it, because there's always somebody in the family that still want that person there. Like Gaddy said, grandma like, look, no, Junior still gonna be there. You know what I mean? Like, regardless of how Junior acting, that's my grandbaby, and he's still family. And even if he get drunk, even if he belligerent, if somebody still want him there. You know what I mean? I know that ain't part of it, but we are talking about managing our emotions. So sometimes at family gatherings, we still have to deal with these people. And I understand people click it up too, but I think sometimes I can be optimistic and hoping that the next time they come, they won't be like that. And I think there may be some other people in the family the same way. Coach rubbing his hands.
Yeah, no, we're lying to ourselves. We do that. Stop that. We need to stop doing that. We can be optimistic.
I agree.
We can be overly optimistic, but when we have historical documentation that shows that every year Uncle Ray gonna get drunk, he gonna tell Gaddy that ain't your real daddy, and all that other great stuff. Like, this is gonna happen. It happens every year. So we can be optimistic. You're only lying to yourself.
Yeah.
You're hoping this year gonna be better. Okay, well, we're hoping the next year gonna be. No, I tell you what, y'all hope I'm not coming. So we got to think sometimes, and just like we'll talk about, the spouse says something hurtful to her husband, and he's got quiet and he didn't say anything about it.
Yeah.
Same thing happened with Big Mama. Big Mama want her to
Yeah.
want Uncle Ray to come as well. But are you gonna tell Big Mama? Say, hey, you
Yeah.
know what, Big Mama? Uncle Ray always messes the family reunion up. When we gonna make a decision for Uncle Ray not to come?
That's our baby.
I don't care.
Yeah. That's why Coach said I ain't gonna be there.
I can still listen. I can
Okay.
still tell Big Mama I don't care and still love her at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we know when Uncle Ray's starting to get drunk, and that's when
Yeah.
I can exit stage left.
I'm
I
smelling like.
I think we're blaming those people that get inebriated a lot when
Yeah.
other times you have parents that may not want to relinquish the duty of parenthood in their adult children's houses, where they come and they trying to regulate. They trying to tell you what you gonna do in your house. Well, if your daddy was here, like, what? This my house. Like, hold up. Or how your spouse is supposed to act and things of that nature. So yeah, families get crazy, and yeah, that's a
Now,
whole gamut.
we've been talking about mastering our emotions, all for almost an hour and a half right now, for almost 90 minutes. And it seems like once we start talking about family, not that our opinions change, but there is a different side of emotions that kind of came out with all of this. You know what I mean? And we're talking about mastery. So it seems like, so why is it like, why do y'all think that we got really kind of passionate and you know what I mean when it came to the family stuff, especially like the immediate and cousins and stuff like that? Like, why do y'all think that was like more? I don't know. Maybe it's just my opinion. Maybe that's
Oh,
where
I
I got.
did. I was responding to y'all.
Yeah. I did.
I think we had more responses because that's
Yeah,
real
more
for everybody.
responses.
For the
Yeah.
most part, that's real for everybody. We've all been in those family settings, and it's not that like there's an emotional attachment. There's a reality to it. So it's like, no, we know this happens, and so we know this needs to be. Some of us probably needs to be addressed in our family right now. But I think that's why.
I just drew a circle around my life and I just stay inside of it. That's pretty much what I do. Last question, and then we're going to get to our final thoughts for this evening, gentlemen. Again, ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't already, go ahead and hit that like, share, subscribe button, bell notification, all those other different things like that. And then we're going to keep it moving. I don't know if I was supposed to say that or not, but it just came out. Go ahead, Coach.
Before we get to this, I just want to bring up Miss Charlotte Jordan's comment because I'm glad she said that. She said on behalf of the on behalf of the big mamas, it's about family being together because that's the only time they get together. So they're willing to put up with all family members. The key here, in my opinion, is that's the only time. Not so much as the family gathering, family reunion, whatever. The key is that it's the only time. There's the problem, right? And I'm agreeing with what she said because I know I've actually heard that before. But again, the problem has to be addressed the other 364 days of the year, not just that one day, right? It has to be addressed like, why is this the only time we're getting together? Why don't we figure out a way to come together regularly so that, we can start weeding these things out? So I'm glad she said that.
Yeah, I am too. And it just made me think about we had our family reunion last year and I'm 49. I was 40. It was my first one. You know what I mean? So everybody was there. Uncle Ray was there and everybody else. So yeah, we got Uncle Ray in our family too. So hold on. Let me bring up that question again. Thanks, Charlotte Jordan, and everybody else who asked a question and stuff like that early on. Really, we always appreciate the comments and the questions and stuff like that. Like Coach always says, we will derail a whole conversation for a question. So always feel free to join in and be part of the conversation. Let me get rid of this question. Where'd it go? Oh, here we go. All right, so last question of the night, gentlemen. What role? I know somebody said something about they get triggered by other drivers. So, what role do emotional I think was it Nick D? Was it Nick D? Yeah. What role do emotional triggers play, and how do we take back our power from them? I think we can probably just skip right to the second part of this if y'all want to. I think we've kind of touched on some emotional triggers and different things like that. So if you just want to answer the second part, that'll be perfectly okay.
I guess I'll go first so them smart brothers can go after me. Immersion. Sometimes you have to get in front of the thing, get in front of whatever the trigger is, identify it, speak it, talk about it, whatever it may be. You have to put it out there so that it doesn't have so much control over you. You're not suppressing it anymore. That it's out front. We can talk about it. We can have discussions. That way it minimizes its effect. So I think when it comes to emotional triggers, that's
Tell the VA to stop canceling all my BH appointments and then reset me with a new counselor every 3 months and then take 6 months to reschedule me again. That's my real answer, but my show answer. No, I'm joking. But for real, some of us need help dealing. It's easy for us to act like all of us can deal with this stuff in our own living room by ourselves just by listening to a podcast. All right, but the reality is some of us need help dealing with these emotional triggers. Because for me, your emotional trigger might be minuscule. I'm like, that's nothing. You can get over that. But I don't know the depth of what happened that caused that trigger. Like, oh, you get mad every time somebody cuts you off? Well, dang it, I don't want to die with my kids in the car, or whatever the case may be. Or because maybe I saw a bad accident, maybe I lost a family member in a car accident, and you know, so you don't know what's behind, what's under the surface. So sometimes you got to go deal with that, and that may mean getting some help, right? So deal with it, whatever that looks like, figure it out, and maybe even get a support team, and let's figure this out together. Let's support you while you figure it out. Yeah.
Here's what my support looks like. Go get some help. Listen, your emotional trigger serves as information for you and you only. That is all. I don't need you to relay it to me. At the end of the day, if it's something that I'm doing that in your mind causes a trigger, you can let me know. That don't mean I'm gonna stop doing it. Right? Get help, do better, overcome it. Especially if it's like a thing that I do that's part of a normal routine. Like, oh well, it triggers me when you leave the toilet seat up. Man, I'm a dude. Get over it. No, I'm joking. But I'm just saying.
Put the toilet seat back up. Put the toilet seat back up after you done.
Oh, put the toilet seat down because I fall in. I mean, stuff like that. But I'm saying that I'm saying that joking. I don't think toilet seats are a trigger. I'm just being, silly. But I'm just saying, your triggers are for you, not for anybody else. It is real-time data for you to understand when the situation is right. This is what happens to you. Roland, I'm gonna come back on something you said. You said immersion. Do not do immersion with triggers. I'm telling you, you're gonna run yourself bananas. Total immersion means you're putting yourself in a situation where the triggers is gonna constantly trigger you over and over again. Don't do that. You're gonna go crazy, right? I give you some techniques later, but again, to this question, and especially for the sake of time, your trigger is real-time data and information for you to understand when these situations present itself. This is what happens to you. So now, what can you do about it?
I like it. Hey, we're gonna slide over to these final thoughts real quick, ladies and gentlemen. But before we go, give y'all the housekeeping thing. So you can find us here Tuesdays, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for Coach's Corner. Coach, what else we got on the menu for the week?
Man, I almost lost focus. What did you say just now, Coach's Corner?
Yeah. What else we got on the menu for the week as far as
I thought you was rolling with it, bro. Yeah, so Tuesdays 7 p.m. Coach's Corner, as you know, Friday nights 8 p.m. The Hearts of Men. Tomorrow morning, which is the fourth Saturday of every month, which is an episode of Reframing the Image of Relationships. So be here 10:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Sunday we have TikTok live at 11:30. I think this week, Roland, you're hosting. I don't know. Voice of Reason. Okay, got it. I'm sorry. I apologize. The Voice of Reason hosting. So be there on TikTok live at 11:30. And that's about it. So yeah.
All right. Who's up first? Who I say up first? I forgot already. Oh, Roland. Did I say Roland?
I
Hold on.
got
I
you.
gotta go back and look at the chat. No, I got it. I got it.
Okay,
I
all
want
right.
to do it. I'm gonna do it.
Master your emotions. Don't let them master you. First and foremost, when it comes to your emotions are yours. So, and we always like to use scripture. Scripture tells us about having the fruit of the spirit. One of the fruit would be self-control. Another scripture tells us be slow to anger. Another says be angry and sin not. And then another says above all things, guard your heart. When you learn that your emotions are your responsibility, your triggers are your responsibility, it allows you to see that in all things that we do, we cannot just simply master our emotions. That's not something that you can just take control and now I have it. I got the cat by the tail or whatever. It's something that you have to continue to mature in. You're ever maturing in how you deal with things and your level of maturity when it comes to emotions, when it comes to triggers, when it comes to things that normally would control you when you're immature. But when you get into a mature state, you learn how to better control yourself so that things don't outwardly affect you as much. And now you can actually have conversations. You can actually be around people who say certain things that you dislike or have triggers that set off triggers within yourself. You realize like, man, this is more, it speaks more about me than it does to them and what they intend for me. So learn how to master yourself, learn how to mature yourself, and then you will see how your emotions are your responsibility and yours to look forward to growing in.
I love this conversation. I loved everything that was said in the chats and on the panel. What I would say is when we look at mastering our emotions and not letting them master us, don't think of it as if I can suppress my emotions or as if I can shut down. Think of it more as I can handle how I react in that moment and not allow myself to become uh I don't want to say hyper emotion, but not allow myself to act out in my anger. Be angry, but sin not. I mean, don't allow the anger to cause you to do something that you will regret. Take time, count the cost, and let's move in a way that the Most High would desire for us. And that's all I have.
I love this conversation. When it comes down to mastery, like I said previously, mastery is the ability to do a thing at an extremely high level without the use of conscious resources. Therefore, if we're looking to obtain emotional mastery, I don't think we're able. I don't think we can do that. I think we have to look at our emotions as a progressive means of understanding who we are and how we deal with any and every situation in this thing that we call life. Therefore, our emotions serve as one of the most profound things in our life that teaches us great information about ourselves. So, if my emotions becomes by de facto a teacher, um, it be becomes a teacher in life to me, then I cannot master the teacher. I have to learn from the teacher. And what am I learning from the teacher? I am learning about me. How am I going to respond to this situation, to this person, to whatever that looks like? So again, don't focus, in my opinion, don't focus on mastery. Focus on progressive awareness. Focus on progressing in every situation, whether it's your relationship, your job, or whatever that looks like. And I think over the time, what you'll find is that the emotions that you were that kept you hostage for years, those triggers that you had previously, you will find that, the chains fall off. You're not held hostage or captive any longer, and those triggers no longer exist. And so now you get to experience the freedom that you obtain by virtue of learning those things about yourself. And those are my final thoughts.
My final thoughts for this evening goes back to everything else and the conversation and the topic for tonight, which is master your emotions, don't let them master you. Coach just mentioned something about the mastery and the definition of it. At the end of the day, what I would like for you to walk away with is understanding that emotions are a huge part of our everyday life, and we use them and we come across them on a regular basis. So if nothing else, we at least need to get under control of them, and have and learn the ability to be able to manage them at the least, because a lot of our relationships are dependent on how we are with our emotions and our emotional intelligence and our emotional management. So if you look at somebody that may not be good in those areas, I would probably assume that they don't have good relationships with overall. So if nothing else, if you didn't get anything else out of this, I don't know how you could not, but at least, walk away with knowing how important it is to gain control over your emotions. Gentlemen, this been real. This has been fun. I really enjoyed it. Chat, appreciate you for being here. And then, gentlemen, again, we understand that it's always good when we can all get together and come together and share ideas and have conversations and perspective and different things like this. So I thank y'all for helping me tonight as I led this conversation, because being gone for a couple of weeks, you come back, you're a little nervous, wondering if you're a little rusty a little bit, but you guys made coming back a lot easier for me. So again, I appreciate that. And I want to tell you that, here publicly tonight. Chat, and everybody watching, apologize for keeping you guys here a little bit longer. But no buts. Apologize for keeping you here longer. Gentlemen, y'all have anything before we close out? Nope. Everybody good?
To Lisa Dove Washington, it's fun sometimes. That's all.
Nah. There you go. It is fun sometimes. All right. I'm assuming she understands that. All right. Y'all have a good one. We will see y'all tomorrow morning at 10:30. Peace.